Are Connor McDavid's days in Edmonton coming to an end? And a couple of Maple Leafs targets fly off the board as we inch closer to July 1. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Went to a Jays game last week, Dave. I used the promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and I've gotten $20 off my tickets. I went right as the first pitch was about to be thrown, and I got cheap tickets because you're allowed to, they sell tickets right up until first pitch and even a little bit after, and I got them dirt cheap. I ended up scoring these things for after the discount for like $8 a pop. So pretty solid. Use the code there, LOCKEDONNHL, and get yourself some tickets at Gametime for whichever event you're looking to go to see. Thank you to our everydayers who are subscribed and taking the podcast each and every day. Just a reminder that this is a season-long podcast. So although the season is over in the NHL, we're a 365 every day, all-year podcast. So make sure that you are subscribed for the latest and up-to-date news of what's going on with the Maple Leafs and elsewhere around the NHL. And boy, was there ever a pipe bomb press conference from old Connor McDavid yesterday. Dave, what did you make of what he had to say?
Well, it's funny. The guy who usually doesn't say much, he didn't need to say a lot to get people saying "uh-oh," especially in Edmonton.
Yeah, we got a couple clips that we want to play, so we might as well play them, and then we can kind of react to them. So instead of us talking around what McDavid said, why don't we hear from the horse's mouth? So if you got those, well, why don't we play those clips? Play those clips now. Which one do you want to play first?
Let's play the longer one first. I think that one makes. Actually, no. Let's play the shorter one first.
Okay.
Because I think that's probably more necessary.
As you said, yeah, it's only been a couple days since the season ended. Take some time to regroup. Talk to my agent a little bit and family and all that, and make some decisions whenever that time comes. But there's no rush on anything like that.
That's the first one.
Okay, so let's listen to the next one then, because that was interesting. I will say, saying he's in no rush to make any deal, and obviously everyone knows that July 1st there is going to certainly be a big time microscope on him and whether or not an extension is announced, because he's able to officially sign an extension to Edmonton on July 1st. And if that doesn't happen, the hockey world's going to be like, oh, what's up? Is McDavid thinking about leaving after 2 straight losses in the Cup final? What's going on there? He continued on that conversation here on Media Day.
You know what you mean to Oiler fans and then everybody. And Leon said, obviously, he'd like you here forever. It's not something you had to talk about, but with the July 1st window opening, when you look at, just what you've built here with this team and how close it is, do you feel like there's unfinished business for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. This core has been together for a long time. And we've been building to this moment, all along. The work that's gone on behind the scenes, the conversations, the endless, disappointments and some good times along the way, obviously, as well. We're all in this together, trying to get it over that finish line. With that being said, ultimately, still need to do what's best for me and my family, and
that's who you have to take care of first. But of course, there's unfinished business here yet.
Ooh, that must sting for Edmonton people to hear. He's speaking
It was
glowingly,
going
like
so well until that final little.
yeah, right. He's like, yeah, of course, it's unfinished business. We've had this core here. We've been working towards something, but ultimately, I need to do what's best for my family. You know where his family lives, Dave? Do you know where Connor McDavid's family lives?
And where his family is from, where his wife are
Right.
from.
Like his immediate family, his parents, his friends growing up. Where are they from, Dave?
Good old Newmarket, Ontario.
That's right. Last I checked, definitely not a geo major, but last I checked, the Toronto Maple Leafs are the closest NHL franchise to Newmarket, Ontario. So basically, he's going to be a Leaf, Dave. It's happening. He's coming to Toronto. It's going to happen. Oh, my goodness. Let's start the parade now. The Connor McDavid sweepstakes are going to begin, and the Leafs are going to be the front runners, babies. Is that what you took from that conversation? I'm sure that's what pretty well every Leaf fan took from that conversation.
Yeah, it's not like the Discord threw it in there and went, I emoji, I emoji, I emoji.
Yeah. It's
Love
interesting. What's funny about that though is and there's another clip there. I don't know if we have that other one or not, where he talks about where he says, if I feel I can win, I'd sign in Edmonton. Is essentially what he said. It's like, if I feel like we can win here many cups, and he stressed that if I feel we can win many cups, I'd have no problem signing in Edmonton. And that leads me to believe that he doesn't feel that way right now. I don't know. Do you read into that at all? It doesn't sound as though he's ready to sign.
No.
And that's a problem. If you're Edmonton, that is a problem. How else do you prove to this guy that they can build a winning program? They've gone to the Cup final 2 straight years. They went to Game 7 and Game 6 in the Cup final. I mean, how much more do they need to prove to McDavid?
And I think Connor McDavid saw this as a bit of a regression from the team. Like you look at what happened in the offseason, right? They didn't really improve the team. The team kind of stayed the same. If anything, they lost, future players, right? They lost 2 young players.
Broberg, yeah.
Right? And then you look at, they didn't improve the goaltending, right? That was something that was always a question mark for that team. They didn't do it. They barely.
Maybe that was a shot across the bow that basically said, "Find me a goalie this summer, I'm out."
In a way, improve the areas that just are, they've been building towards something, but there's clear areas where they just aren't up to snuff with a Florida right now. Not every team has a Sergei Bobrovsky, and it's not easy to get those.
Right.
But you can't be going into Game 6 of the Stanley Cup final and wondering who your goaltender is going to be, right? That was part. I think that's part of it. And we didn't get into it on the last show, but the Evander Kane stuff, they almost weren't able to make really any moves at the deadline until they got clarity on Evander Kane's situation. Jake Wallman almost wasn't an Oiler, right?
Yeah. So basically, the Evander Kane situation, you want to summarize that really quickly for those who are unaware?
Yes, essentially the NHL always has somebody investigate the LTIR guys, and making sure that the reason they're on LTIR is legit. The Oilers apparently gave the NHL everything, and the NHL decided we might want to take a closer look at this.
Which is hilarious. I don't know. They're going to single out the Edmonton Oilers. There's been so many instances where it's a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Oh, that player's injured, and all of a sudden they're good to go miraculously for Game 1. They couldn't have played a game sooner. Yeah, okay, pal. All right, but anyways, is what it is. I also did see, speaking of Evander Kane, someone mention him as a possible Leafs offseason target. If the Oilers are looking to go in a different direction and move off of Evander Kane and maybe open up some space for them to make some big moves, could he potentially be available, and would he be the type of P&V player that the Maple Leafs could be interested in. I'm curious to get your thought on that on the other side, because there's two players that were possible targets for the Leafs that are no more. One signed, one has already been traded. So maybe Evander Kane could be an option. We'll talk about that and more on the other side. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. There's nothing like playoff hockey, the energy, the rivalries, the nonstop action. With the Stanley Cup playoffs heating up, there's never been a better time to see it live. And Gametime makes getting into the building fast and affordable. Gametime gives you last-minute ticket deals, zone deals for deep discounts, panoramic seat views, and all-in pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ticket prices often drop the closer you get to puck drop, so you can score big without overpaying. You can save huge on zone deals. They pick the best seats at the lowest price. And right now, zone deals are offering 10% off exclusive deals for FIFA Club World Cup matches. And you can see your exact seat views before you check out the game to give you complete confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code Locked On NHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The Locked On at Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, free and available. You can find podcast episodes wherever you get your podcasts and also up on YouTube. All right, Dave. So Connor McDavid, should he be considered at this point a Leafs offseason target? Yes or no?
This offseason?
Yeah. I mean, if you're the Oilers, like, you don't let McDavid walk. Like, you have to trade him if he's unwilling to sign an extension, right?
I like, you cannot let the best player in the league decide, yep, I'm going to leave, but I'm also not going to let the team get something back from me. Like, first thing, I don't see McDavid doing that to the Oilers. I think he has enough respect for the team to want to help if that's where it ends up going.
It feels like a shot to Mitch Marner there, Dave.
Yeah, pretty much, right? Like, if you know that you're contemplating leaving, and if the team's like, you know what, we can't afford to just let you walk, buckle up, right? Like, at least that's
what would that package have to look like, though? Like, that, here's the problem with this: the Leafs have like no first round picks. If you're trading away McDavid, like, you would think that you would have to give up a few picks along with your superstar talents. Like, would they do a McDavid for Matthews, like 1-for-1? I don't even know if they would do that.
The problem here is both sides, there's no movement clauses. So McDavid can say, yes, I'm not, if you're looking to move me, I'll waive my no movement clause, but it's only to go to here or here. Yeah. Right? He's got all the say in it, right? Because the Oilers can be like, well, we want to trade you, okay? Like, if you're not going to stay, we'd like to see if we can move you. And McDavid could probably be like, yeah, okay, but this is the only place I want to go.
Right.
Then the Oilers will be at the mercy, like at the
when
mercy.
Patrick Kane got traded, or when Marchand said, I want to go to Florida, and they're like, okay, guess we'll give up a conditional second-round pick because we don't have to give up much more than that.
Exactly.
That's pretty much what happened.
So I think, I think that's going to be the big thing for anything with McDavid is the Oilers are going to need to know by a certain point. Like, they're not going to let what happened with the Leafs and Marner, where you get to the point of he's not sure. And look, I don't think they want to have it lingering during the season. I don't think McDavid will want it either. He does not scream to me as a player that wants to handle those questions.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, the big one for me is if we don't and someone, I think I saw Ryan Rishaw kind of said, like, July 1 isn't a firm he has to sign by the state. Not necessarily,
Right.
but the longer it goes on, you just can't ignore those questions.
No, and I think Leon went through into August without a deal, if I'm not mistaken. He eventually did sign, but it did go pretty late into the summer. Matthews' deal didn't come until later into the summer. So it happens where July 1, sometimes you expect that contract to be announced, especially when they're big important pieces like this. But there's a lot of details, I guess, within them. But I like
But
just flat
at
out.
least there were negotiations, unlike Marner, where it appeared there were no negotiations.
Yeah, no negotiations there. And they tried to trade him twice. And he said, I'm just going to stick it out and leave via free agency. And that's where we are with the Mitch Marner sweepstakes right now. Just lastly on the McDavid thing, are you, give me a percentage that he signs an extension this summer with Edmonton? Right now, where are you at?
Right
Is
now?
it more likely?
It's more. I'm in the 70-80%. I
Yeah.
don't.
So you still think it's very likely he signs?
Because players like that, if they feel like everything's okay for them, then I don't see him. I just don't see him wanting to make that move unless he absolutely feels he needs to. But that could also change within. No, it's a couple conversations, couple moves, seeing how things are, and he can make that change. But I just want temper your expectations on star players. Generally, very unlikely to leave. It doesn't happen very often. John Tavares is probably one of the few cases, right?
Yes,
to leave in free agency.
Correct. And now Mitch Marner joins that
Yeah.
list as homegrown superstars that leave in their prime for free agency. But maybe Connor McDavid can join that list. And if they do, you darn well know the Maple Leafs will be right up at the top trying to get a seat at the table for that. I will say currently the Oilers have $11.9 million in projected cap space. They need to re-sign Corey Perry, Carter Brown. We'll see what they want to do with Jeff Skinner and Kasperi Kapanen. Evan Bouchard is an RFA. Yep, they got to get his deal done. And then, Trent Frederick, there was a reported deal in place for Frederick that'll pay him south of $4 million. So that takes up, a chunk of that 11.9. So that'll put them down to 7.9 million. And that's probably what it'll take to get Evan Bouchard signed in the 8-ish range, I would think, to get Bouchard signed at this point, 8 to 9 million maybe. So they've got to find a way to get some more money if they want to find a goaltender, right? That's where it is. And I think a goalie is necessary in Edmonton. And one way they could potentially do that is by moving off of Evander Kane, who's making $5.13 million. I saw someone in our comment section on one of our YouTube, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, mentioned hey, maybe the Leafs could go after Evander Kane if the Oilers need to make some space, some room to make some moves, get a little different. He kind of maybe is getting the Nazem Kadri treatment right now out in Edmonton, where he was very very undisciplined in the Cup final, and it cost them a couple of times, especially in games 5 and 6. And maybe they want to go in a different direction. And, that would open up $5.13 million in cap space for the Oilers for them to go out and add a goaltender or add some more, more talent around the edges. Would that be something that Toronto should be interested in as a team that's looking to upgrade in the top 6? Would Evander Kane interest you at all, Dave?
Would Evander Kane interest me? Not particularly. I understand he brings that different element that sometimes you're looking for, but that Cup final to me was such a disaster for him.
Yeah,
he was undisciplined. There's just too much, in my opinion, that too many red flags when it comes to Evander Kane for me. His contract's not good. They that. There's a reason why he was placed on LTIR. They finagled it in a way because they wanted that extra cap space. And
I mean, I don't know. If
He
that's
was hurt, but I don't think he was full season hurt.
Yeah, there's a lot of play. I mean, you can say the same thing about Patrick Kane, about Kucherov. It's like they're good players, right?
Yeah.
They want the cap space so that they could have Evander Kane and whatever they could bring in at the deadline. And they knew that their team was good enough to still, get into the playoffs. I don't think it has anything to do with his skill level as to why they put him on LTIR. But your point remains. The Cup final, yeah, it was a bit of a disaster. But like that's the type of P and V that the Leafs need in their lineup, and I think that'd be a worthwhile. I think they should at least look into it. I think they could look into it and see, like, hey, are they willing to dump Evander Kane, similar to the way that Mason Marchment was dumped yesterday? Like the Kraken gave up a third and a fourth round pick for Mason Marchment, who's a pretty darn good player. Certainly worth more than a third and a fourth round pick. But if you can do a similar type trade for Evander Kane, it's only 1 year left on that contract. I think that'd be willing to do that. Roll the dice on a 1 year, kind of see what we got type of deal. I mean, Kane's still a very good and effective player. Like that's the thing. He still is fairly effective. Like last year, he still ended up scoring 24 goals for Edmonton, and 22 the year before that with 16 and 41 games. He had 22 and 43 games, 22 and 56 games. So he misses a lot of time, and that's obviously a bit of an issue. He has not really proven that he can be very healthy. But I think that it's you can look into it. If you strike out on a couple of these other top free agents, he could be an option at least. I think for the Maple Leafs, because they've already struck out on a couple, right, Dave? They've struck out on a couple already. We'll talk about those two players that the Maple Leafs could have been interested in that are now off the board, and we'll do that next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as always, Monday to Friday, wherever you get your podcast. The Maple Leafs are looking to improve this summer, and other teams have already started to improve. A lot of signings and trades already going down around the NHL, none of which involving the Maple Leafs. None. Like they haven't signed any of their free agents. Guys like Steven Lorentz still out there waiting for a contract. Obviously, the big boys, Tavares and Marner, who knows what's going on with them. Matthew Nyes is an RFA, still awaiting a deal for him. The Maple Leafs have been very, very quiet throughout these last few weeks here, and definitely over the last couple of days leading up to free agency. The buyout window begins today, I think, actually 24 hours after the cup's been handed out. So to begin today, will they have any buyout candidates? Possibly. We did a podcast on that before. We kind of concluded there's not really anyone who's buyout worthy, mainly because a lot of their contracts are buyout proof. You're not saving a whole lot of money, and sometimes you're better off just putting them on waivers and in the minors and burying the contract than you are buying them out. But could they possibly make some additions? Yes. A couple of those additions that we thought could be Toronto Maple Leafs in the future off the board. Couple moves were made yesterday by the Dallas Stars. They re-signed Matt Duchene, your guy. Matt Duchene, you thought he'd be a good Tavares replacement. Not going to happen. He's sticking in the big D. He signs a deal 4 years at, was it 4.5 million?
4.5.
4 years at $4.5 million. So very similar to the Ryan O'Reilly deal. And he sticks around, so he won't be an option for Toronto, which, again, you're looking for a framework for Tavares. That's an interesting wrinkle, right? Like, it's funny. You look and it's like, okay, you've got possibly Matt Duchene at 4 by 4.5, or you've got Brock Nelson at 3 by 7. Somewhere in the middle, I guess, makes sense for John Tavares, you would think. But besides that, no Duchene. You sad about it, Dave?
I was not surprised. Obviously, you like to see potentially options, right? But yeah, I mean, he wanted to be in Dallas. It was clear, right? He made it clear he wanted to be in Dallas. They gave him the long-term deal, which I think was also the other thing that he really wanted. And I also think that there's you know, if you're Dallas, getting that deal done was important because who you're replacing him with, especially at that price. You're not replacing him.
Yeah.
I think that
No
was a
one.
win for him. And I think the win for Duchene is you got term and you got and he's already making money off the buyout. So
Yeah.
compensates a little bit on the salary there too.
This is true. This is true. He's got money coming in from Nashville for the next couple of years as well. And Dallas, it's one of those no income tax states too. So, 4.5 million there is more money than you would make 4.5 million in most other places in terms of take home pay and lack of taxes that you'd have to pay. So you do also need to keep that in mind a little bit when you see contracts like that kind of filter in under the radar. But again, like it is one of those targets that could have been a Tavares replacement. So it makes you wonder if a couple more of these guys, like if Sam Bennett now all of a sudden signs in Florida, Duchene's already signed in Dallas, your Tavares replacements really thin out, right? Brock Nelson has re-signed in Colorado. It might get to a point where if you're Toronto, you might have to bring back Tavares because there is no other option on the free agent market. And you don't really have many options, many assets to trade in order to replace him. So, to me, when I see the Duchene trade, it almost makes me feel like it's more likely we see Tavares come back to Toronto because it's becoming very thin in the replacement market for him.
Yeah, and we're hearing Sam Bennett likely returning to Florida, which again, not a surprise.
No.
They're going to offer him exactly, maybe not the salary that people think that he would have gotten, but the term is, I think, also kind of important to him. And he gets to stay in Florida, gets to stay with that team. So if you're the Leafs, probably try to see if you can get John Tavares to sign before free agency. Like, don't let any other team talk to him.
Yeah. The other player that was traded that could have been an option, also from Dallas, Mason Marchment, former Maple Leaf. Mason Marchment, famously traded for Dennis Mulligan back in the day. He's had a great career ever since that trade, and he signed a pretty big ticket in Dallas a few years ago. He's somewhat lived up to it. He's had multiple 20-plus goal seasons. He's been traded to the Seattle Kraken for a third and a fourth round pick. And that's the type of player that Toronto looks at and would like to add to their group, to their middle six. And there's obviously a familiarity with him in the Toronto and the Toronto organization. It's a different management group than the one that drafted and developed and then traded him. But the body type is kind of what that Toronto likes. But here's the problem, Dave. Like it only costs a third and a fourth round pick. That's all it costs to acquire Mason Marchment from the Seattle Kraken. It's a really. I'm surprised no one was able to beat it. Like no one was willing to give up a second round pick for a guy like that. Like, did it shock you, the return? Did that shock you?
It did. It did because I think Mason Marchment has has value, right? It seemingly that trade made it seem like there wasn't really as much value for him on the market, and there's I think kind of two things there. I don't know if he coached him well. No, he's gone now. I was thinking of who would have been there on the coaching staff from the Leafs, but Haxall's gone a long time ago. But like I look at this as Dallas obviously needs cap space because they were in the red before this trade.
Yeah, this is a pure cap dump.
Yeah,
like this gives them space pretty much. That they replaced that money with Duchene's money right away, and it maybe allows them to find some more change around the house to make the deal and get J-Rob signed because he's been on the block. But if you can move out, a Marchment, maybe that allows you to keep Robertson, which that's a smart move. Like that's a good trade-off, right? Keeping J-Rob for Marchment. So it was pretty much a cap dump, but I'm just surprised no other team. I'm not surprised Toronto wasn't able to make that trade. Like, this is the biggest issue with Toronto is they can't really capitalize on some of these cap dumps. And this would be a good year where you finally have cap space, you have needs and in your top 9, and unfortunately you have no assets and no draft picks to go out and make deals like this. Like, if Toronto wanted to do the same deal and match it, a 3rd and a 4th round pick, they don't have it. They have a 3rd. They don't have a 4th round pick. Could they have beat it and offered a 2nd round pick? Yeah, I guess they could have. They do have Florida's 2nd round pick, so they could have beat that pick. Maybe they would have had to add one of their 5ths or something like that. But they barely have any draft capital, so they're kind of scared to trade away these picks. If they do that, they trade away a 2 and a 5 instead of a 3 and a 4. They only have 3 draft picks this whole draft after that. And they only had 3 draft picks last year too. So, they can't really be handing those things out to a whole lot. So it's another, cautionary tale, I guess, for Toronto when they're moving all these picks left, right, and center at the deadline. It kind of takes them out of those possible bargain deals around this time of year when teams are looking to just dump players for super cheap. They unfortunately don't have the assets to take advantage of that.
No, and again, you have to be very careful with how much you're spending on assets. And like Marchment has 1 more year on his deal, so you have to think about if you're doing that trade, you want to get him kind of signed to a new deal after that, so you're not just throwing picks for a rental, because we have seen the Leafs do that far too often. And yeah, I mean, and there was also Marchment had a modified no trade list, so I don't know if he had the Leafs, would have had the Leafs on there. We don't know. So I think that's also something that has to be considered. But yeah, it just kind of felt like, Dallas went to teams that had abundance of cap space and says, hey, you want a guy that's gonna, give you some size, and Seattle needed a player like this.
Yes,
big time. So they're willing to also pay up for that. But I mean, Dallas is not done. I'll say that, because they got no cap space and they got so much to do. They want to bring back. Apparently, they wanted to bring back Granlund, but like, you're just swapping out Duchene for Marchment, so I don't think that's going to be enough to really get that done either. So buckle up.
Yeah, what do they have now after that trade? They've got $4.9 million in cap space, and they've got Maverick Bork is the RFA. They have to get signed. Granlund, I guess, and Jamie Benn. I imagine Ben won't, probably not going to take a whole lot of money. Maverick Bork, we'll see what that costs. But like Colin Blackwell, Dodonov, how much those guys are going to cost. Like, there's some role players on this team, I guess.
They don't have a lot signed, right? Like, they only have 8 forwards signed.
Yeah, well, they could move off. Try and also, I mean, Dumba and Lyubushkin, like those 2 contracts, they should be looking to get out of, because I still don't know why they made those deals. Dumba at 3.75, Lyubushkin at 3.25 with 2 more years left on that contract. Those are inefficient contracts. So those 2 players could open up $7 million in cap space if they can get those 2 out of there. And they've got, some players already that they like that can go in and take their job. So, those are 2 guys that I think they'll be looking to move or possibly buy out if that works as well for them, to open up a little bit more space to make it work. But then next year, yeah, they got J-Rob and Thomas Harley, both due for contracts next year as well. So, yeah, it's going to be an expensive couple of seasons for the Dallas Stars. They could certainly use the cap increase, that's for sure. Again, some of these teams getting lucky where the Maple Leafs just got screwed. The second they paid all their guys, the cap got stagnant, and we never saw it grow. And they lost people left, right, and center. Whereas all these other teams, they seem to be, when their big boys are coming due. Oh, look at that. An extra $5 million in cap space. Oh, look at that. We're going up an extra $10 million on the ceiling. It's like, that could have been nice for Toronto back in the day. But we can't live in the past anymore about that, Dave. We're moving ahead. We're moving forward. And we're sitting now with, what do we got? 11 days till free agency. So we'll see what the Maple Leafs have in store for us. Maybe they'll make a signing, an extension will come through over the weekend. Maybe a trade of some kind can develop. We'll see if the Maple Leafs can get anything done over the weekend. But that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. You can also check us out on Instagram at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys on Monday. Enjoy your weekends. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.